local. Colts, Pacers, that kind of good stuff. But I want to start with what everybody is talking about, which is this AFC Championship game. Now, the first thing is how absolutely obnoxiously whiny so many people are about the Bills coming up short and having a few calls that did not go their way, okay? Now, we might differ on how we view those calls. It ranges from one extreme of they absolutely, positively got screwed. This is the biggest rigged job of all time. The NFL is fixed, yada, yada, blah, blah, blah. Or there's the other extreme, which is they might have gotten it right. Like, that's the other extreme. Now, the truth might be somewhere in the middle, but let's get into all of this. The first thing I want to do is, instead of getting into the nuts and bolts of the calls and the game, I want to zoom out a little bit more. And I want to do something that applies to everybody. It's not just fans of the Chiefs or the Bills, or if you're a diehard NFL fan and you're just watching. It's going to matter more if it pertains to the teams that you love and you root for. Right? It's going to matter more in those situations. So this is the first thing I'm curious about. If you do a little self-diagnosis, right? If you ask yourself, hey, looking back, what's the whiniest I've ever been about a sporting event? That's the first thing I'm curious about. Like, think of all these Bills fans or all these anti-officiating fans. Really, I guess that's what it is. It's just a cool thing to say the NFL is rigged and they're cheating for the Chiefs. And oh my gosh, the Bills got screwed. Right? It's the cool thing to do is just whine out loud. Go to your Twitter page and whine, 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 whine. It's just a whine fest. And it's the cool thing to do. It's not cool to be like, yeah, the Xavier Worthy catch, I think they got that call right, actually. Not the cool thing to do. Everybody just wants to whine. So I'm curious, if you zoom out from that, could be any game, any team, anything. What's the whiniest you've ever been in your sports life? I'm really curious about that. And I started thinking about that myself. Like, what's the whiniest I've been as a sports fan? What was it about? What was the game? What was the situation? Even better, I think there are two different categories as far as this goes. There's rightfully whining, right? Like, it was clear the call was just blown. Your team got hosed. You had a right to whine. Maybe it took it a little bit too far based on your degree of whining and volume of whining and all those things. To me, the best category is looking back, you were illegitimately whiny. You know what I mean? Oh, you just had a hissy fit and, oh my gosh, and you gave it a year or two or longer, and you looked back and you're like, you know what? I was a little over the top as far as that goes, So two categories as far as whining. I started thinking about what's the whiniest I've ever been. Now, again, two categories here. I reserve a complete category, a bin that's just itself, which is labeled sports betting, okay? If there's a sports bet that goes haywire, oh gosh, I've known to be whiny, angry, all sorts of just unpleasant things. You can just hear yourself and the whiny voice you have. Like, what do you mean? Like, your voice just kind of goes up an octave immediately. If you're like me and have had a sports bet or two over the years, I've gotten better, by the way. You'd be proud of me as far as this goes. There's a little putback attempt by the Hoosiers at the end of the first half. Point blank range. Back iron. Missed the bet because he missed that shot. I didn't get whiny at all. I'm making strides, my people, okay? I'm a work in progress. But point is, I have been whiny to an alarming degree and volume over the years when sports bets go haywire. It just happens. You got to learn to take it, roll with the punches, because there are going to be a lot of punches and a lot of crazy things when it comes to sports betting. Now, if you put that bin to the side, move it over there. Now we're just looking at being a sports fan. What's the whiniest I've ever been, rightly or wrongly, about a call, a game, whatever, that didn't go my way? You know what I think it is? Off the top of my head, and I've been thinking about this for a while, and I can't think of something that doesn't include sports betting that I was whinier about. Now, I would argue that I was just arguing, and I had a legitimate reason why I was arguing this point. It goes back to the NFC Championship game a couple of years ago. It's when the Saints got hosed against the Rams. It was a clear and obvious pass interference penalty that wasn't called. If the flag is thrown, the Saints have a first down. They take a knee, 3 straight plays, kick a chip shot field goal, and they're going to the Super Bowl. And the call wasn't made. I think that's the loudest and whiniest I've been. I don't even know if whiniest is the right word, because that was an absolute miss. Just a complete miss. And the wrong team went to the Super Bowl and then got pummeled by the Patriots 13-3. How much more fun would it have been to see Drew Brees and the Saints take on Tom Brady and the Patriots? Oh my gosh. You think that game's 13-3? I don't think so. So that's probably the whiniest I've ever been. Something else I thought about when a call should have been made technically, but wasn't, and I never got whiny about it. It was the Bush push. It was when Notre Dame was playing USC in 2005, and Reggie Bush pushed Matt Leinart into the end zone on a QB sneak. And technically at the time, that was an illegal play. You're not allowed to push a player like that. And I don't know why. I was never slightly whiny about that. Now, I'm from South Bend. I am a diehard Notre Dame football fan. I was actually lucky enough to be doing the Notre Dame pregame show at that time, and they would give you a press box pass. I would stand basically on top of the press box. There's like a little level right before, I wasn't on the roof, but there was like this little level I would walk up to, because if you're literally in the press box, it's enclosed in glass. It's a quote-unquote working environment. No cheering, no nothing. You can't feel the crowd. I hated it. I would go on top of that and be able to feel everything, and it was awesome. And then I got to go down to the field for the final 5 minutes. I was on the sideline watching that unfold. And I don't know, man. I can't explain it why I wasn't whiny about the Bush push. Maybe it was the 4th and 9. There was a 4th and 9 conversion that should have been stopped by Notre Dame, and Dwayne Jarrett got loose for a long completion, set USC up. And I just looked at, I thought it was a weird technicality where Reggie Bush wasn't allowed to push Matt Leinart, but he did, and he got away with it. For whatever reason, I just never got upset about that. I was never going to argue like, well, technically he's not allowed to push him. And I just thought that was lame. I just wasn't whiny about that. So first things first, I'm curious, and you're welcome to chime in here. Very interested to hear from you. What's the whiniest you've been as a sports fan? On the heels of the AFC Championship game, where it is just, just crying and tears galore. The streets are flooded with tears from these fans. They're like, the Bills, they got a first down. Oh my gosh. It's got to be driving Jimmy Cook crazy. It's basically what it boils down to. My Lord. And if we could get into the nuts and bolts of the game here just for a little bit. Because this is what I find interesting. It's not just about the Chiefs and the Bills. This could apply to every team. I mean, really, I think that's the thing you got to do is ask yourself, how you would react as a Colts fan or whatever team you root for in Indianapolis, right? How would you react if your team was the Chiefs? How would you react to Sunday's game if your favorite team was the Bills, right? Like, that's a legitimate question to ask. And I'll put it this way. If I'm a diehard Bills fan, or my team is randomly, I don't even know how it happened, I'm a Miami Dolphins fan. I'm from South Bend, Indiana. I've rooted for the Dolphins my whole freaking life. And it was even before Marino, slightly. I'm 47 years old. It was slightly before Marino. My first memory was A.J. Dewey, a defensive player. I loved A.J. Dewey. And it was just the Dolphins for me. Maybe I liked the helmet, whatever. Who knows? So if the Dolphins were in the Bills' shoes on Sunday and the game went down the way it did, I'm honest with you guys. I am completely objective when it comes to some of these things. Like, I do have the ability to put my rooting allegiance to the side. Good example is, I told you I'm a Notre Dame diehard football fan. Notre Dame against Penn State in the college football playoff. There's a big moment in the game where Notre Dame got an interception. Huge interception at the time in the end zone. It was going to be a big, big deal in that game. And they got whistled for pass interference. And there were a lot of fans, many Notre Dame fans, many non-Notre Dame fans. Some of my friends hit me up who don't root for Notre Dame, like, dude, that was pass interference. I was like, they were like, that wasn't pass interference. What kind of call was that? I'm like, that was pass interference all day. Like, it was Tyler Warren, the Penn State phenomenal tight end in the end zone. And the Notre Dame defender wasn't looking for the ball and made contact with Tyler Warren. It's textbook pass interference. So the point is, I can look at something, whether I'm rooting for Notre Dame like crazy or not, and say, yeah, that's pass interference, even though it really, really hurts Notre Dame. Penn State, that kept the drive alive. They scored a touchdown. It was a big, big deal in that game. But the point is, I can tell you, yeah, unfortunately, they did make the right call. There was a play, if you're a Notre Dame fan, years before that. They were playing Florida State on the road. Big game. And Notre Dame scored a touchdown. And I was actually living in Indianapolis at the time, coincidentally enough. I'm jumping around my apartment. I'm like, yeah, Irish. I'm going crazy. And they were like, offensive pass interference, Notre Dame. And I looked at that. I'm like, that's the right call. That's the right call. They did not miss that call. So I can be honest with you. Now, let's get to Sunday's game. If my favorite NFL team, the Dolphins, if they were in the Bills' shoes and the game played out exactly the same way, this is what I would tell you. The Xavier Worthy catch, I have no problem with that call at all. None. Like, all these people online that keep saying the same things. The ball clearly touches the ground. I just want to say, you realize it's allowed to, right? The ball can touch the ground, okay? Like, we're many years removed from, do you remember the 1999 NFC Championship game? It was Tampa taking on the greatest show on turf, the Rams, who scored 11 points that game because Tampa's defense is freaking nasty. But Tampa had the ball. They're down 11-6. They're trying to score. It's at the very end of the game, and Bert Emanuel catches the ball. Looked like a 12-yard gain, was going to set up 3rd and long, but was going to be a good gain for Tampa Bay. And they ruled it incomplete because the ball touched the ground. From that moment, since then, the rule has been changed. The ball can touch the ground. It's only incomplete if the ground helps a player catch the ball. I don't understand all these people that have conveniently forgotten. Just watch the NFL this year, really. I would love to know how many catches occurred where the ball did touch the ground, but it didn't move. It didn't assist the player catching the ball. and it's ruled a catch. Why is everybody forgetting about this? I'm literally looking at all these comments online. This is one tweet from ML Football. Whoever ML Football is, they are banging the conspiracy drum here. My Lord, all caps right here from ML Football, whoever that is. New angle. Awful call from the refs. This was somehow called a catch for the Chiefs. The ball clearly hit the ground, and the wide receiver did not have full possession of the ball. This is insane. One other one from Dov Kleiman. I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. Apologies if I'm not, but has a big following, covers the NFL. And he wrote, even though this ball clearly hit the ground and neither player had complete possession, the refs ruled that this was a catch by Xavier Worthy. By the way, he does pronounce the X right there. Xavier Worthy. Then it says, the Chiefs, with a handshake emoji, the refs. like they're in cahoots together. Okay, this is the interesting part here. The Xavier Worthy catch. So Dov's argument is neither player had complete possession, okay, and the ball touches the ground. Now, I would argue this. Cole Bishop is the Bills' safety. He initially has control of the ball. The ball touches the ground, but it doesn't move. It doesn't assist either player catching the ball. What I think happened, and I'm not sure, I'll be honest with you, I don't know if the rule book agrees with me or this would make any sense, but hear me out. I think Cole Bishop initially had possession of the ball, more so than Xavier Worthy. But the ball touches the ground. The ground doesn't assist either of them with the catch. So to me, it doesn't matter to me. It didn't assist them, so I still think that what happened was Cole Bishop has to complete the process of the catch. When they're kind of rolling over after hitting the ground, like Cole Bishop hasn't completed like the process of the catch. That's when Xavier Worthy grabs the ball as well, and he completes the process of the catch. When they both complete it, the tie goes to the offensive guy. So at worst for the Chiefs, it's an incomplete pass. At worst, for all these people saying, oh, I touched the ground. You could argue Xavier Worthy didn't have full possession at that time. Maybe that factors in. You don't award him the catch. I don't know. But at worst, it's an incomplete pass for the Chiefs. There is, in no world, it's an interception for the Bills. None. Zero. Okay, because Xavier Worthy had the ball by the time Cole Bishop completed the process of the catch. Because there's no chance, zero, that it's a Bills interception. None. Okay, get that out of your mind. The only thing that could benefit the Bills is if it's an incomplete pass. And oh, by the way, there was a defensive holding call on the Bills, which was completely legitimate, which if it's an incomplete pass, the penalty would have been enforced, and the Chiefs have a first down. So, for anybody to make a mountain out of a molehill with this call, the Chiefs gained, 20-ish, 25 yards? I'd have to go back and look exactly on that play. Do you think that makes a world of difference? Do you? Did you watch the rest of the game? The Chiefs scored 32 points. A hot knife through butter, half the time. Wide open receivers, left and right, consistently throughout the game. Do you think 20-ish yards made a world of difference? Stop arguing dumb things. My gosh, the amount of crying, illegitimate crying, embarrassing, so embarrassing. Now, the other part of this is the first down that wasn't ruled a first down for the Bills. Okay, so Dalton Kincaid, he was close to getting the first down on third down. This is the way the NFL goes. It's not just a Chiefs thing. They are very stingy when it comes to awarding yards. You watch college football, you'll watch a guy gain 9 yards, and these college officials are like, that's close enough. First down. First down, Tennessee Volunteers. Just move the chains. They'll make this motion to the chain gang like, just move it along. It's whatever. The NFL is not like that. The NFL, they are like, nope, not quite 10 yards. That was more like 9 yards and 7 inches. They're very precise, okay? So Kincaid, I think he was a little bit closer than where the ball was spotted. But again, not like his body was across the line to gain and they marked the ball where his toes were. You know what I mean? Like, okay, and then the fourth down play with Josh Allen. Again, I'll be honest with you. I think he got it. I think he got it. With the naked eye, or eyes, right? They both can be naked. I think he got it. But when they reviewed it, it wasn't clear. It wasn't obvious. It wasn't indisputable. His back got to the line to gain. I'm not positive the ball did. So they awarded the Chiefs got the ball. And here's the other part of this. I was thinking about this. And I will somehow bring all of this to Anthony Richardson and the Colts here as the show goes along. All right, I will. I'll pull a Houdini act. But if the Bills got that first down, can we do the if game just for a little bit? Because I think this is important, okay? If the Bills got that first down, what happens from there? Like realistically. And you break it down to, I think, 4 scenarios, okay? Let's start with best case scenario if the Bills got that first down. Best case scenario is the drive stays alive, they score a touchdown that would have given the Bills an 8-point lead at the time. Of course, they would go for 2. Best case is they get the 2-point conversion. They're up by 10 points. Okay? That's best case scenario. The second best case is drive stays alive. Josh Allen gets the first down, move the chains, you know. They score a touchdown, they go for 2, they don't get it. They have an 8-point lead. Okay, third best case is the drive stays alive, they kick a field goal. They've got a 4-point lead. Okay? Worst case scenario is they don't score any points for a number of reasons. You know, there's a sack, there's a penalty that backs them up, there's a turnover, Tyler Bass misses another kick, you know, any number of things. Who knows? The drive stays alive and there's a defensive score. Like, that's not even the worst case scenario, right? Like, but the legitimate worst case scenario is they don't score. Okay? Like, here's my question. If that's ruled a first down, are you betting the Bills win the game? Okay? Like really, ask yourself that. Are you betting that the Bills win the game? Let's not forget, this is a team that going into that game had lost 3 straight playoff games to the Chiefs. That's a team that had a lead at Arrowhead in the playoffs with 13 seconds left and still lost. Okay? Are you betting the Bills win the game with a 1-point lead getting that first down on that Josh Allen sneak? I'm not. Now, that would have helped their odds tremendously, and they might have won that game. But to act like this is rigged, this is fixed, this is the biggest conspiracy on the face of the earth, it's just so obnoxious, man. So obnoxious. Now, next hour I want to get to Josh Allen and Anthony Richardson, because I think it's an interesting comparison with where their careers began, how Josh Allen's career has blossomed. What are the realistic chances that could happen for Anthony Richardson? I have some thoughts on that, and I'll just tell you this. I'm not optimistic. That's all I'll tell you right now. But next hour, let's chop it up. Coming up next, Greg Rakestraw. He will join the show. What I want to do, this is a theme of part of the show. Ceiling and the floor. Okay? If you're looking at a number of teams, players, whether it's Anthony Richardson, the Pacers, IU hoops, Purdue hoops, what's the ceiling realistically and what's the floor realistically speaking? So that's part of what I'll get into with Greg. He's coming up next. I'm Brian Noe, in for JMV. Keep it locked right here, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
boner at PE in high school. He was wearing sweatpants. It was really embarrassing, so this song goes out to him.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe in for JMV. Hopefully catch up with Greg Rakestraw here pretty soon. Rakestraw. Funny thing, man. When I started doing radio in South Bend, Indiana, my hometown, Greg Rakestraw was one of the guys that we would have on. And that was one of the very first guests that we had. So I actually go back with Greg Rakestraw. Pretty cool. And man, that South Bend job, that was from like 04 to 06. And we would interview Greg from time to time. So, yeah, hopefully get him on here pretty soon. He said he was ready to go a little bit ago, and now no. He was probably like, oh, wait, I thought JMV was in today, though. That kind of changes the math that this no jackass is in here. You know, like, that'd be fun. Literally, that goes through my mind, the random things that – imagine Greg just driving around and completely disagreeing with the entire first segment. And he's like, you know what? I'm just going to let this go to voicemail. You know, I don't have time today for this guy. This guy over here. Oh, man. You know what's funny, too, is Jimmy Cook is a diehard Chiefs fan, which you guys are well aware of. On with, Jay Query. And we were doing shows a couple of years ago in Indianapolis, and I didn't like the defensive holding call. So it was the Super Bowl 2 years ago, right? Super Bowl 57. And the Chiefs are driving. It's late in the game, and there was a defensive holding call. And I didn't love the call. It gave the Chiefs a first down. They ran the clock down. They kicked a chip shot field goal. They won the game. It's a huge, huge call in that game. And I argued that I didn't think it was a good call. So it's just funny how things have completely shifted, where I am, after Sunday's game, I am much more pro-Chiefs than anti-Chiefs. This is a total conspiracy. The fix is in. This is rigged. Blah, blah, blah. I just don't see it that way, man. I think people are going way, way, way too far with this stuff. But if you've got some thoughts, feel free to check in. You're more than welcome. Love hearing from you guys. Love being interactive. So if you have anything to say on that, feel free to do so. I started thinking about this too. What's the worst sports take? What's the worst stance I've ever had? And it's not that I'm racking my brain trying to come up with something that's bad. I'm just trying to think of what's the worst. You know? I'd probably have to ask my listeners and my friends, because they could be, oh, dude, I've got a Rolodex of stuff, you know? But when it comes to yourself, initially you're like, you know, I don't know. I seem pretty reasonable about a lot of stuff, you know? But your friends and your listeners can call you on stuff all day. But I bring this up because on the heels of this AFC title game, someone tweeted me, and it got me thinking about this. So someone from Not a Burner tweeted me, listen to this, put any of the top 10 quarterbacks on that team and Mahomes on another team, still would be KC winning. And I just replied, LOL, no, not at all. Like, what are we doing at this point? First off, think of the top 10 quarterbacks in the NFL, okay? And you don't have to have the exact list just going off the top of your head. But think of some of the quarterbacks that would almost be consensus top 10 guys. Lamar Jackson, okay? Consensus top 10 guy. You put Lamar in Kansas City. Are they going for their fourth Super Bowl this year? I don't think so. Lamar Jackson wets himself all of the time in the playoffs. All the time. And you just plug him in there and, I mean, status quo, you know, just plug and play. Just Mahomes is kind of ordinary, Can't confuse him with any of the other 9 quarterbacks in the top 10. He's not different at all. Just, same. What are we talking about? Really? This is how dumb some people are getting with this whole thing. And I get it. Listen, you might be tired of seeing the Chiefs. You might be annoyed. You're worn out. All that type of stuff. But don't let that emotion turn you into an idiot. Don't let it. You might be sick and tired, but don't all of a sudden say, hey, man, you put any of these other top 10 quarterbacks on the Chiefs, they'd still be winning, man. I mean, really? I mean, think about some of these top 10 guys. You get toward the bottom of the list, like Stafford, maybe Baker Mayfield right now is a top 10 guy. You don't think there's any difference between Mahomes and Baker Mayfield? Are you really? You think they'd just be hoisting Lombardis left and right with Baker Mayfield and KC? I disagree with that. Listen to this. This is a crazy stat. The chances for a team to do what the Chiefs have done. The Chiefs have won 17 consecutive one-possession games. Okay? For another team to do that, and this is the caveat, that they're in the neighborhood of the Chiefs. They're like not as good, but they're in the neighborhood of being a really, really good team. This isn't, some bottom feeder team that's trying to rattle off 17 straight one-possession wins, right? So that's the caveat, is like a good team. The Bills are a good team. The Ravens are a good team. For them to win 17 consecutive one-possession games, that would be about a 1/10 of 1% chance. That's what we're looking at here. But somehow, just plug and play someone else, and they're winning at the same rate as Mahomes. Come on, man. That's just insanity. Okay, we've got Greg Rakestraw. He's with us. Greg, welcome in, man. Good to talk to you. I was telling the people, we go back, man. I first started doing radio in South Bend from 04 to 06, and we would have you on all the time. That's how far we go back.
Well, I'm glad that 20 years later you still have me on the show. Then I got to take that as a good sign.
That's really good. Absolutely. So I was kicking this around today. The whiny reaction after the Chiefs-Bills game, it got me thinking, just if I ask myself, what's the whiniest I've been as a sports fan about a sporting event? A call didn't go your way, an outcome didn't go your way, could be any of your favorite teams, could be a team that isn't one of your favorites. If you think off the top of your head, Greg, what is the whiniest you've been, the most complaining you've done about a sporting event that didn't play out the way you wanted it to?
Probably the 2003 AFC Championship game where tackling receivers off the line of scrimmage became legal by the New England Patriots. And 20 years later, we have the phrase illegal contact, 5 yards, first down offense. Probably that would be it. But this is kind of the all politics are local. So if, you were going to, say, New England, what they would say would be Deflategate or those things surrounding it, 10 years after that. So my guess would be if you were in 40 different radio markets on this show today, you would get 40 different answers from 40 different radio markets.
Oh, absolutely you would. And that's what I find to be interesting about it is, a lot of times you have a legitimate reason to be whiny. Is there anything, and I think this is a lot harder, is there anything that at the time you threw a fit about, but you gave it some time, maybe it was years later, and you looked back and you were like, you know what, I might have overreacted about something. Does anything come to your mind as far as that goes?
Well, that would be like an admission of growth on my part that I was wrong, and that doesn't happen very often. So probably not. I mean, I still want to call Nick Bavetta from the Larry Johnson 3-point shot and one from the 99, Eastern Conference Finals when the Pacers blew that as a 1 seed. And trust me, the Pacers were more than complicit in their own demise in that series. But that call, sticks with me. So, yes, if given the time, I'm sure I could probably come up with something like that. But I'm not sure I have the personal growth to admit that.
No, all good right there. And, man, with you saying that, I had a flashback. You remember the zoomed out camera shot of the Garden? And when that shot goes in and all the fans, their arms go in the air at the same time, that just makes you sick as a Pacers fan, for sure.
Usually I have two fingers that go in the air that correspond with that. Not full arms, just a couple of particular digits. And frankly, I'm a much bigger fan of the shot, and I think this was the year before in 98 when Reggie has the last-second three, and everybody in the building knows it's coming. And it is just hands to head. Dear God, what were we about to witness? Or basically the polar opposite of what happened the year later.
You know, it's interesting we're talking about this, Greg, because, you know, I was listening to Jake and Jimmy Cook today, and they were talking about the lack of NBA rivalries right now, you know? And I guess the first part is, do you agree with that? And the second part is, the NBA for a few years, they've talked about tweaking the postseason format where it's not East and Western Conference. We're just talking 16 teams, or if you have play-in teams, whatever it is, and we're all jumbling them up. And it's just seeded however it is, where there's no East or West affiliation. And I started thinking about that, the trickle-down effect with these rivalries. Like, you wouldn't have as great of the odds of these rivalries where these teams are duking it out year after year. What do you think about, let's just go with the postseason format. Would you rather keep it the way it is with East and West Conference, or would you rather it be 1 through 16 and we don't care about conference affiliation?
You know, I would rather keep it the way it is, just because I don't think that we're at a point right now where there is this huge gap between how good the West is versus how good the East is. This is not what it was 15, 20 years ago, where the Lakers, didn't have much competition, say, in the early 2000s. And obviously the Pacers were one of those victims, back in 2000. I think it's pretty balanced. And frankly, I think the lack of NBA rivalries is because we have a lot more parity. What breeds these rivalries is seeing the same team and knowing that I've got to get past this team to get to where I want to go. It's what made Brady and Manning, hence Colts and Patriots, so great. They were revolving around each other for the better part of a decade. And only in 1 year, Brady's not rookie year, but his first year starter in 2001, were those two teams in the same division. Yet from 2003 through 2011 and into 2012, they played each other every year. And for the most part, there were massive ramifications, not just in postseason games, but in regular season games too. To a lesser degree, maybe not a lesser degree at this point, we have that. And watching the AFC Championship game on Sunday, I kept thinking, all right, this is going to be Josh Allen's breakthrough moment. This is Peyton Manning and the Colts in the 2006 championship game, and it didn't materialize that way. But I use that example because, again, you have those rivalries when the same teams see each other. Well, frankly, because we're kind of in this era where we're seeing different NBA teams, it's not LeBron and the Cavaliers versus the Warriors every year. It's tended to mix up. That would be why people say, hey, the rivalries aren't as great, because simply the permutations are different. And you know that even in an 82-game season, the most you're going to see another team is 5 times, and normally it's 4. But now with the NBA Cup, like the Pacers played the Bucks 5 times last year, then saw them again in the postseason. That doesn't often happen. It's just kind of the way the scheduling formula works out right now.
I want to go real fast here, Greg. Ceiling and the floor here. Okay, so I'm just curious, if you go with the Pacers, what's the realistic ceiling for how far they could go this season, and what's realistically the floor for how far they don't go?
I think it's a pretty narrow band, to be honest with you. Given that seemingly, fingers crossed, they have figured out whatever malaise they had to start the first 25 games of the season, and yes, injuries did play a factor in that. I think the floor for them would be if they were stuck in the play-in round. Like, I don't see them being any less than, say, the number 7 seed, for example. But I really want to say 6, because that is now the line of demarcation. Do you have to win a game to make sure you're in the playoffs, or do you know you're going to be playoff bound? As far as the ceiling, this may sound odd because you've already been there, but I would say getting back to where you were last year in the conference finals. Do you have enough to get past the Celtics or whomever, might be the favorite these days in the Eastern Conference? I would still say Boston is that team. But because let's be honest about this, the Pacers went out and won, but they were handed some gifts in terms of Bucks injuries and Knicks injuries. Can you do that again if those same gifts aren't handed to you? So to me, that's the range you're looking at for the blue and gold.
Okay, Greg, last one for you real fast. You look at IU and Purdue, they play on Friday. Same question for both. What's the realistic ceiling for IU and Purdue? What's the realistic floor for both teams this season in college hoops?
I think the floor for Purdue would be to get knocked out the first weekend of the NCAA tournament. Are they so far above other teams as they were last year? No, and obviously they were above everybody with the exception of one team, that being UConn. That ceiling is not there, but I would say their ceiling, is it still possible they could be a Final Four team? Absolutely. It takes kind of the right matchup of teams and not having an off night from Braden Smith or Fletcher Lawyer. But I think the floor would be to be knocked out in the first or second round. The latest, bracketology kind of has Purdue consistently as a number 2 seed, even with the loss to Ohio State last week. Obviously, those things are much lower. I think we're generally seeing the floor for Indiana. So I would say the ceiling for them would be, the ultimate pie-in-the-sky dream is to be a second weekend team in the NCAA tournament. We all thought going into the season that at worst they're making the tournament. Now you might say it's the best. So I'm not sure I want to see it get any lower in Bloomington, but they still have the talent. Even if they just make the play-in games in Dayton, they have the talent to win 3 games and play another week. Of course they do. Now, are they going to capitalize on it? Probably not, but I think that talent is there, Brian.
No, I hear you, man. Well, hey, Greg, good to spend a few minutes with you today, man. Hope you have a great evening and catch you soon.
You got it, buddy. Take care.
All right, you too. There he is, Greg Rakestraw. Good stuff, man. Good. Yeah, that's – I think he's right about the Pacers. It's pretty narrow. Think about that, between the ceiling and the floor. Best case scenario, worst case scenario, most realistic. I don't think it's, winning it all versus, first round exit. It's really narrow. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room. It's like your first apartment. The ceiling wasn't that much higher than the floor. That sort of thing. All right, coming up next, Colts fans, it could be annoying looking up. It can be a breath of fresh air looking down. I'll have some details for you coming up. I'm Brian Noe, in for JMV. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
JMV.
If somebody gets in your face and calls you a I want you to be nice.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I'm Brian Noen for JMV. We go to the phones here. Our guy Frank is on the line, wants to check in. I love being interactive, so I'll put what I have on hold for a second. I'll get to the Colts, where it's probably a breath of fresh air to look down. I'll pay that off here, but first, Frank. Frank, what's going on, man? You're on the Fan?
Oh, man, doing pretty good out here working, but I got a little time in between. You was talking about whining. I agree. There's a lot of whining going on between fans and, coaches and all that stuff. But my thing is, last year, at the beginning of the year, you brought this up, so I'm going to go with it. And JMV was ranting and raving because somebody called in and said he was whining. Oh, he went off. And I was like, wow, I wouldn't have never called in again myself, and the guy never called in again. But, Mike Woodson, he's having hard times here and there, and I don't understand why he took the players out when he did, but maybe he shouldn't have. But he's got to learn those things. Even as a former coach and player, he's never coached college. Cut him some slack. And he's not going to be there long, because if he keeps doing the stuff he's doing, eventually they're going to get rid of him. Nobody stays forever. And he's older, too. So, cut him some slack. All these people crying and all that because IU lost the game. All teams lose the game. Connecticut lost the other day. Stop all that whining, ranting and raving. I said I was going to stop listening to both shows, your show, his show, and whoever else got a show, because I listen for sports, but all this crying, oh my goodness.
Too much, Frank. Too much crying there, right?
Man.
Yeah.
Sound like a bunch of babies. But anyway, that's it, man.
It's all good, Frank. I appreciate you checking in.
Because he might get mad.
Okay, all right. Well, I will not relay that message, man. You have a good day at work.
Hey, you too, man. All right. Bye.
Thank you, man. There he is, Frank. Hey, listen, that Maryland game, that was a rough one. I tell you what, sports, it's like, there are examples in life, not involving sports at all, where life kind of strings you along. You know what I mean? Like you're thinking, all right, I'm not going to get this job. That's not going to happen. And then all of a sudden you're like, but wait, it's looking more favorable. I might get this job. And then at the end, it's like, no, you don't get this job. Sports does that all the time. You might have been watching that IU game against Maryland, and you're like, my gosh, we're down by 10. It's getting late, dude. It's not working out. We're done, man. And all of a sudden, you're like, we've got a lead. We're in a commanding spot to win this game. Let's go Hoosiers. And then all of a sudden, it just goes to hell. And Maryland cans a 3 in the final seconds, and then the final shot attempt from IU. You got teammates. Renew is like, bro, you're supposed to go around. What are we doing right now? I think that the point I'm making is that's what makes losing even more tough to take, is when you were coming to grips with the loss, and then there's this glimmer of hope, and then you're like, we're going to win, and then you lose on top. That makes it even worse. And I think that fuels a lot of the whining that will take place. I think that happens. Okay, right around the corner, we get to James Boyd. Looking forward to it. Let's talk some Colts. Let's talk some Anthony Richardson. I am pessimistic. I am calling for the Colts to make a big change in the not-too-distant future, and we'll see if James is on board or not. I'm Brian Noen for JMV. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
and the beat goes on. 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe, in for JMV. I want to welcome in James Boyd. He covers the Colts for The Athletic. You know, it's funny, James. I'll when I'm filling in, I'll look for my notes for the last time I filled in, just to get. I use all these Word documents, so I'll get some of the things that just translate from the last show to the new show, and I'll just randomly kind of sift through my notes of what I was talking about or what have you. And I talked to you. This is, I think, July 3rd was the last time we talked. And in my notes, it just says, bone in over boneless wings. So that was one of the things that we talked about that day. That was what you opted for. You go bone in. That's a solid play right there. I can't go boneless wings myself. Yeah, and you would think it's way more convenient. I just can't do it. It doesn't taste as good to me.
Man, I cannot have the convenience over the quality. The bone must stay in.
It's gotta stay in right there, no doubt. Here's the first thing, James, is I'm watching the AFC title game, and I'm watching the quality of these quarterbacks, and I can't help but think of Anthony Richardson and where the Colts are headed, So where are you right now? Let's start with this. Are you still in the mindset of, hey, Josh Allen had a few rocky years, and then he turned it into go mode, right? Are you still optimistic? Are you still hopeful? Or are you like, bro, he completed like 47% of his passes this past season. What are we doing here? Where are you right now with Anthony Richardson?
I would say I'm leaning more towards the latter. Obviously, the 47% completion percentage, missing games again due to injury, the benching because of a lack of preparation, according to your coaches and your GM. Like, those things combined probably have me thinking, can this really work more than ever? Because before I was like, okay, he showed some things, he's flashed some things, he's still an incredible athlete, he's been injured, just give him some time. But this past year is pretty rough. And I think the most damning thing is when I asked Chris Ballard at the end of the season about Anthony Richardson being benched and why that was even needed to happen. And he's like, well, he's a grown man, but it's kind of like when you have kids and, you ask them to clean their room and they don't do it. And I'm like, what? The guy gets $30 million to be a face of your franchise. Forget cleaning the room. He is the guy. We're supposed to be. So, yeah, a lot of questions.
A lot of questions. And that's where I'm at. I think this is the bigger picture, James, is I think you got to be honest with yourself where he is and where the Colts are headed. And I put it like this. In dating, I'm not dumping who I'm dating, but I'm open to other options here. Like that's where I am with Anthony Richardson. I say this, and I'm curious if you agree or not. And please tell me what you really think. When the draft rolls around, if there is a legitimate quarterback option where you're taking a guy that's got some talent who one day could turn into a franchise quarterback, I am taking him, and I'm not even hesitating. You go back to Washington, when they drafted RG3, number 2 overall, they still took Kirk Cousins in the 4th round. We've had 2 years of Anthony Richardson either being injured or stinking it up when he's on the field. Why are you still clinging to hope that this guy is going to be the guy? If I have any sort of option in front of me, I am taking it come draft time. Are you on board with that?
I see where you're going, but I think it probably wouldn't hurt possibly for them to look at a quarterback or drafting a quarterback in, let's say, the 4th round or later. But I think the reason why they're sticking to it is because there's really not a lot of great options to move on from Anthony Richardson, at least at this juncture. You're not picking super high in the 1st round. The free agency market is not that great. I mean, unless you're looking at, Sam Darnold, Daniel Jones, Justin Fields, some of those names. And then this is the guy that you drafted in the 1st round, first quarterback, that is his Andrew Luck. Like, the knock against Chris Ballard was you hadn't drafted a quarterback in the 1st round. And so when you finally roll the dice, I think that they want to see this through. I think that the indication right after the season from Jim Irsay, hey, GM staying put, head coach is staying put, indicated that he wants that big 3 of Anthony Richardson, Shane Steichen, and Chris Ballard to sort of figure it out or at least have one more season to do so. So is that the right move? I don't know. But I also think that the alternatives look bleak as well. So you might as well try to, give him one more year. But I do think if he comes back this year and doesn't look like, he's made any strides as far as being a better quarterback and a lot better quarterback, then I think after this year it'll be wise to move on. So a lot of decisions to be made for sure.
Yeah, I think it's possible you could try to do a blend of both. I mean, ideally, Anthony Richardson would just get it going and he's your legitimate franchise quarterback. That would be awesome, but I don't know how realistic that is. If you have a legitimate option in, say, the third round, fourth round, or whatever, Anthony Richardson hasn't given me enough reason, if I'm the Colts organization, to say, no, man, I'm in the Richardson camp. You know what I mean? It's like, I got to go look for another guy. Like, the Washington didn't think, oh, Kirk Cousins, he's going to turn into what he turned into. They thought maybe he could. If you have a maybe option, I'm at least starting the clock on that guy simultaneously, that when Anthony Richardson is still there, right? Like, I don't think it has to be, all right, we're moving on from Anthony, let's get our new guy. It can be, we're still like clinging to hope with Anthony while we're still looking to move on. I don't think you have to wait until 26 to do that. I think you could do that in 25, right?
You possibly could. And honestly, probably wouldn't be the worst idea in the world, mainly because if you look at their quarterback situation beyond Anthony, I don't think you should bring back Joe Flacco, and that seems highly unlikely given his age and things like that. And then Sam Ehlinger is also a free agent. Now, do you try to bring Sam back because of what he means to Anthony and their relationship and their bond? Or do you do like you said, Brian, where you go out there and you say, hey, Anthony's our guy going to 2025. Well, we got two other spots as far as his quarterback position that we want to fill. Let's draft one. Let's go get one in free agency. Probably not a bad idea. And so these are the things they have to ask themselves and they have to weigh because the quarterback position still isn't figured out. And that's the thing that's probably most frustrating for this franchise is that you're 3 years in and you still have more questions than answers. And the answers that you do have aren't good ones. I don't think you can stamp it, as Chris Ballard said, that Anthony Richardson is your franchise quarterback, that he is your guy of the future because of the things that I mentioned, the inaccuracy, the inability to stay healthy, and then obviously we better not hear anything close to you need to be benched because you're not working hard enough ever again. Seriously.
Man, I know. That's damning right there. No doubt. He's James Boyd joining us here on The Fan. How about this? The ceiling and the floor for Anthony Richardson. I'm curious what you think about this. What would you say is, like, realistically the ceiling throughout his NFL career? Like how good he could be, and the floor, which is, okay, this is as bad as it could possibly get. What do you see as far as both of those things go?
I think the floor is pretty much what we've seen, where he's had a couple of good moments, but overall you look at his inability to make the routine passes, his inability to complete passes overall, they really, really hold back the offense. And I get it. He was great against the Jets. He was great on that last drive against the Patriots. But beyond that, there have been just too many moments where you wonder, can his passing be enough? And granted, they were better when he came back from the benching and they used him as a runner more. But then you have to weigh in, can he stay healthy enough to use him as a runner? So I think this is the floor where he's, again, hurt, inaccurate, and you're wondering what the heck is going on. The ceiling, I think, is still pretty high. But as I tell you all the time, yeah, his ceiling is a Josh Allen type of player. His ceiling is to be a Cam Newton type of player. And for those snickering out there, Cam Newton, he took people to the freaking Super Bowl. So, yes, Cam Newton, he was an MVP, yes. If Anthony Richardson ever became an MVP, it would be a home run pick. But all that to say, potential is kind of like a backhanded compliment, man. It's one of those things where people talk about it because you haven't reached it at all. No one talks about Patrick Mahomes' potential anymore unless it's about potential of more greatness. But with Anthony, it's all about what could be instead of what is. And so I think he has to close that gap a lot this offseason. And maybe it'll help that he's healthy this offseason, a regular offseason, no draft preparation, no injury rehab to our knowledge. And so maybe that'll help him get on the right track because for all things, consider, he does seem to have certain sparks and moments. You just got to pull it out of him and hope that those things are more than just what I just said, sparks and moments, and really more of who he actually is.
I'm going to get into some hoops with you here in a minute, but one more at least on the Colts. I was thinking about this today, and this might be totally unfair, but I'll try to set it up as best I can where it makes it less unfair. But I was thinking about the Giants as it relates to the Colts, right? Where the Giants, they kept Brian Daboll, and they kept Joe Shane, the GM. And I was just thinking, what are the possibilities that the Colts would do something like that? Let's say it's a relatively similar season, because if they take a step back, then they'd probably blow everybody out, right? But let's say it's 8-9, it's 9-8, it's a similar season. Anthony Richardson struggles, kind of like Daniel Jones, and the front office says, you know what? We're not going to just fire everybody. We still believe in you. There's a reason why we hired you. What do you think the chances are that Ballard and Shane Steichen, I guess, or could survive another down year that doesn't result in a playoff berth?
That's a great question. And this is why I cannot wait to talk to Jim Irsay. I actually just booked my flights and hotels and stuff like that for the owners' meetings at the end of March, early April. And I'm just hoping that Jim Irsay talks this year, because he's the guy you want to ask all these questions to. And until we hear from him, it's hard to say, because you could argue and make a very good argument as to why Chris Ballard should not have been brought back after his, pitfalls. But I ultimately think that if you come back and Anthony looks more of what we've seen going into year 3 and throughout year 3, I don't see how you can get rid of, Shane or Ballard and reset with a different quarterback. At that point, I think you just get rid of all three. You say goodbye to Anthony, you say goodbye to Chris Ballard, you say goodbye to Shane, and you start over there. But again, I'm getting ahead of myself. Everything is doom and gloom in the offseason if you don't make the playoffs and your quarterback isn't healthy and all those things. So a lot could change, but I just don't see any incentive to run it back with this regime if Anthony is, doesn't work out and he's not the guy you drafted him to be. Because after all, this is what a lot of GMs and head coaches are graded off of. It's who you draft at quarterback and how you develop them. And if you took a risk and it doesn't work out, I'm not saying that you shouldn't get another chance ever again in the NFL. It's just that historically, most owners move on.
Yeah, they do, no doubt. Be interesting if it plays out similarly like that, But I was shocked at first. The Giants are like, yeah, we're bringing Daboll back. We're like, what? And then you stop and think, and you're like, that actually might make some sense. He can coach. If he's got a quarterback, he'd probably coach him up pretty well.
Yeah, and they've been to the playoffs more recently and things like that. So they have a couple of things, at least as far as their GM regime, they can kind of hang their hat on and say, hey, well, we did this, we did that. Whereas through Chris Ballard's tenure, it's like, man, it's been 4 years since we made the playoffs. We haven't won the AFC South, which is, one of the more winnable divisions every year. You're not with the Chiefs or the Patriots of old in those divisions. And so it's tough. And I think Chris Ballard's feeling that pressure. And so we'll see how that affects his offseason moves. Obviously, we'll see with Anthony. And I think, again, covering the NFL team, it's like it's never a dull moment, right? It's almost like, if you don't get into the big dance, there's so many changes that should be on the way or could be on the way that still makes it interesting for better or worse.
Yeah, I'm curious, if we look at hoops here, I'm curious what you think about the Fever. Because I'm seeing these trades, right? You've got like Kelsey Plum's on the move. Alyssa Thomas today is on the move. And it got me thinking about the Fever. And it's one of the themes today, the ceiling and the floor. What do you think the ceiling is for the Fever? And what do you think the floor is for them this upcoming season?
That's a good question. Obviously, bringing in Stephanie White was huge. Indiana legend and, a hell of a coach in the WNBA. So, I could tell right away reading some of the things that I've read and seeing the reaction that Caitlin Clark is very excited about, having Stephanie White at the helm and taking that next step. So to me, the floor would be just making the playoffs. You did that last year. If you don't make the playoffs and you change your coach and all those things, these people will lose their minds, Brian. And they lose their minds regardless when it comes to Caitlin Clark. So I don't know if I'm ready for that whirlwind again just yet, although I will be covering the team again this summer. But then on top of that, I think the ceiling would be to, in my opinion, make a push to win a round, or win a round or two. I think that this team, as currently constructed, probably isn't good enough to get you to that next step. So you have to decide, okay, what can we do to not only make the playoffs, but, make it in advance in the playoffs for the first time and win a round and things like that. And to do that, you got to, figure out what you're doing this offseason. You cored Kelsey Mitchell. Do you keep her around and make sure that she's here for the long haul? Do you try to go out and get Satu Sabali, who wants a trade, from her team? And do you try to, sway her from going to the Liberty with her sister and say, hey, we got Caitlin Clark, ready to play with you and things like that. So we'll see, but I'm very excited. I think like I said, their floor is a playoff team, and then their ceiling could be a team that's contending to try to get to, something like the conference finals. Even though they don't have that in the WNBA, but you know what I mean, like that last round before getting to the finals.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think, and just generally speaking, what do you think would work best with Caitlin? Would it be another guard like Kelsey Mitchell, or would it be a big like Satu Sabali, where Caitlin could reach her full potential? What do you think would be the best mixture for the Fever?
I think it would be great to keep Kelsey, mainly because she takes a lot of pressure off of Caitlin when it comes to attention. And I get it. People are probably rolling their eyes. What do you mean she takes pressure off her? Look, man, it's basketball. So when you got one of the best scorers on earth on the wing next to her, that changes things, at least as far as your offensive flow and things like that. And so I don't know too many teams that are going to give up a 19 points per game score as Kelsey Mitchell was last year, and Caitlin Clark too. But I do think that, to your point, you want to try to add more size and more finishing around the rim, and perhaps somebody that can kind of stretch the floor too. So that stretch four, that stretch big like a Satu will be great for this team. It's kind of what they've been missing. And we've seen what sort of those stretch type of players can do when it comes to the production with the Fever. Because you look at Lexi Hall's last season, I know she's not a big, but she kind of transformed her game into being a 3-and-D player, and her value skyrocketed. She was such a difference maker for this team. So you're looking for those types of players that can run the floor, play up pace, knock down open shots, knock down threes, keep the floor space for Caitlin, and then obviously get that offense humming, because when it's humming, it's one of the best offenses in the league.
It's fun, man. Like, just what Caitlin has done for the team, the city, dude, it's a national story. Think about that, from Indianapolis. Like, is this, and it's just, I'm throwing it out there, is this the most exciting thing that has happened for Indy since Peyton Manning and the whole Tony Dungy era? I mean, really, is there something else that you would put on top of Caitlin Clark? Because she is like front page news. She is a lightning rod for controversy, and she's the least controversial person you could have. But to turn it into a national story is huge stuff. I don't think that could be undersold. Where would you put that in context with Indianapolis, compared to, say, the Manning era? And from that time on, what else has been bigger than Caitlin?
That's a great question. I think the only thing that maybe you can try to make an argument for is Andrew Luck going number 1 overall to the Colts, and him taking them to the AFC Championship game. And obviously we know how it ended. It's kind of painful, but when they were in the moment, I mean, people were telling you, hey, Andrew Luck going to take us to the Super Bowl. We got our guy. Peyton Manning's gone. We got Peyton Manning 2.0, basically. So that's the only thing I think that rivals it. But even then, I think you can make an argument for Caitlin being bigger than that, given the social media buzz that we have these days and just her overall stardom. She is a global superstar, and I think people don't really realize that to a certain degree. People who may not be into women's basketball, that's okay. I would encourage you to watch. It's fun hoops, especially watching Caitlin Clark. But she is a phenomenon unlike anything else, because even the Pacers last year made it to the conference finals. And that's a huge deal for a basketball-crazed town, and they couldn't hold a candle when it comes to the attention that Caitlin Clark brings in. Look, they didn't even have a home playoff game last year, but every home game they had in the regular season felt like a playoff game. It's sold out, standing room only, and it was phenomenal. So I'm looking forward to watching her, be as great as she is, and also, go through her maturation process, because she's not a perfect player. She's going to have her moments of issues and miscues or whatever, but she's still growing. And I think that was the craziest part about it, is like if you think about it from this perspective, that's the worst version of Caitlin Clark you're going to see for a long time. And she was first team All WNBA last year. So good luck.
After 10 games, she kicked it into gear. Kicked it into gear. Yes, absolutely. Is she MVP this season, you think?
I think she has a shot at it.
Yeah.
I mean, I truly believe that. I truly believe she could be the MVP candidate and can, put herself in the conversation for best player in the world, which is, I believe that she was in that conversation for the last, 15 games of the regular season last year and going into the playoffs. So we'll see. But as you said, I think I want to just drive home that point again. Caitlin is pretty cool, man. Like, she is as regular as they come. Despite all the things around her, I think to your point, Brian, that there's a lot of controversy around her, but it's never really because of her. If you look at all the things she said, whether it's about, race, whether it's about opportunity, whether it's about, good fans, bad fans, racism, being a great person, all these things, she has never really said or done anything that you can point to and say, this was wrong. I mean, she's carried herself very, very well. And honestly, it kind of reminds me of the way LeBron James has carried himself. Look at the fame level that he came in, the expectations, the weight of the world. And you can't look at LeBron's career and say he's had some crazy off-the-court scandal or some crazy thing that he said. And she's kind of following that same blueprint, which is probably why LeBron's a big fan of her too.
Yeah, no doubt. Well, hey, James, always good catching up with you, man. Hope everything's great with you, and hopefully we can talk again soon, man. Have a great night.
Sounds good. I might go get some bone-in wings, so we'll see.
What flavor, by the way? What would you go with?
I'm a lemon pepper type of guy. Younger me would say barbecue, but I don't like getting stuff on my clothes these days. I try to eat a little cleaner, not messing up my clothes. But, honey barbecue is pretty solid. Lemon pepper is my go-to, though.
There you go, man. Awesome stuff. Well, enjoy it if you do get some tonight, James, for sure.
All right. Have a good one, brother.
All right, bud. I'll see you. There he is. James Boyd covers the Colts for The Athletic. I go sweet barbecue and teriyaki myself. That's how I get down. That's how I go. He got me thinking, though. I love what James said because it's off the top of my head. I was thinking about what's been bigger in Indianapolis as far as the sports scene goes since the Peyton Manning era. What's been bigger? Is it Caitlin or something else? And I loved his answer. He was talking about Andrew Luck because we can't forget. Andrew Luck was a monstrous story. Number 1 overall pick. How many times did you hear, man, this franchise to go from Peyton Manning to Andrew Luck? And not only that, like moving on from Peyton Manning, right? Moving on from Peyton Manning, everything he meant to the franchise, to the city, and they cut bait. And then they moved on with Andrew Luck. And Peyton Manning went and won a Super Bowl with the Broncos and had a lot of success. So that aspect of it fueled how big of a story it was. And then the way Andrew Luck retired with 2 weeks before the season, it was a monstrous story. That was absolutely a national story. So I love that James brought that up. But my mind goes here. Ask yourself this. Which would be a bigger story, locally and especially nationally, if Caitlin Clark retired the same exact way Andrew Luck did? Which would be a bigger story? Now, we do know the NFL is king. So for a former number 1 overall pick to just retire 2 weeks before the season, and the news broke during a preseason game where he's on the sideline, he's walking out of the stadium, and everybody at Lucas Oil's like, boo! Like, that was a huge story. Imagine if the same thing happened with Caitlin Clark. Now, we know the WNBA is not the NFL. We know that. In terms of popularity, ratings, all of that stuff. But Caitlin Clark is a super freaking star. You have to add the freaking part. That's how big of a star she is. Imagine if there's a preseason game, news breaks 2 weeks before the season, Caitlin Clark is retiring. Do you realize how enormous of a story that would be? And I don't think it's just recency bias, but I think that would be a bigger story than Andrew Luck in the way it went down. I really do. That's how big of a superstar she is. If you disagree or agree, feel free to check in. Curious what you think about that. I want to get back to let me be positive for a second. Okay? I'll get back to doom and gloom here as the hour goes along, but let me be positive because I think it can be deflating to look up. I think it can be a breath of fresh air. It can be rejuvenating to look down. You know, let's look down for a second in terms of a local team. I think it can be helpful. We'll do that next. I'm Brian Noe in for JMV. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
The Ride with JMV.
He's my best friend. He's my pal. He's my homeboy, my rotten soldier. He's my sweet cheese, my good time boy.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe in for JMV. Yeah, so here's the thing. It can be deflating to look up. There's value in looking down. So apply this to the Colts. I think it can be pretty deflating to look up at the top teams in the AFC. I bring this up because of the reaction to this AFC title game. Chiefs and Bills, and a lot of it's the reaction is the officiating and all that stuff, the whining, the complaining, the crying. But if you just look at the quality of play, Mahomes and Josh Allen, and you start asking yourself, wow, how are the Colts going to navigate through all of that stuff? You got Mahomes and Josh Allen and Burrow and Lamar. And the oh, by the way, guys are like Herbert, who's good, right? Like they're going to upgrade that talent around him. Jim Harbaugh is there. C.J. Stroud took a step back, but in the same division. He looked good in the playoffs. That's a lot to work through. A lot. So that can be very deflating. But what's better is you want to look down. You know, look down at some of the competition. It can make you feel better. You get a sore neck looking up, you know? So if you look down, there was an introductory press conference yesterday for one coach in particular who's brand new in Jacksonville. That would be Liam Cohen. New man in charge. And he threw out a Duval, right? That's their thing over there, Duval County. So you know how it goes, right? It's obnoxious. Duval. You get all that during the games and all that. So Liam Cohen, in his introductory press conference, he threw one out there. Here's how it sounded. Duval. Yeah, in stereo surround sound right there. It makes it even worse and more cringeworthy than what it was. Oh, my gosh, it was really bad. It was really, really bad. And that's what he went with. And not great. Not the greatest of looks for Liam Cohen. You know, so, yeah. But I think that did make me feel better. If you're rooting for the Colts, how did that not make you feel better? And Stephen Holder, who was on with Jake Query and Jimmy Cook, Eddie Garrison, shout out to all those guys. I loved what Stephen Holder had to say because he's so right. How dysfunctional it looks in Jacksonville. Does that make you feel better as a Colts fan? It does me. I'd rather look down at Jacksonville than look up at the Chiefs and the Bills and the Ravens and the Bengals and all that. Like, looking at what happened with Jacksonville, where Liam Cohen, he was at Kentucky, then he went to Tampa, then he went back to Kentucky, then went back to Tampa. I think I have that order right. Might be flip-flopped, but I think that's right. Then he interviewed for the Jacksonville job. He's like, yeah, I'm good. He's going to be the highest paid assistant with Tampa. And the next thing you know, Jacksonville finally blows out their GM, Trent Baalke. And Liam Cohen's like, all right, cool. Yeah, I'll take the job if he's gone. It's a lot more appealing now that guy is gone. That's so chaotic. That makes you feel better, does it not? They're a team in the same division. That's a team that had high expectations. We're wondering if they could challenge for a playoff spot. And that did not work out for Jacksonville. And, man, you look at Jacksonville, think about that, how quickly things change. When they hired Doug Peterson, it was like, man, look at this team. They finally have a real head coach. Urban Meyer didn't know what was going on. They have Doug Peterson. He's won a Super Bowl. They're winning games. He knows how to coach quarterbacks. You watch out for Trevor Lawrence. And look at how that's turned out. He got blown out. Jacksonville was 4-13. They lost their first 4 games. They were, let me count up all the losses. They were 2-10. 2-10 at their lowest point this season. My gosh. And then they're like, yeah, we're keeping Trent Baalke. And the entire NFL is like, but why? Why would you do that? And then they're like, oh, yeah, we're getting rid of Trent Baalke. You know, I guess that's kind of a sticking point with these coaching candidates like Liam Cohen, who we hope to get. Oh, man, so chaotic. I love some of these introductory press conferences. To be fair, we've clowned some of these guys over the years. Dan Campbell with, we're going to bite a kneecap, we're going to bite another kneecap. And we're just like, what is this guy talking about? And look at all the success that Detroit has had. Dan Campbell has done a really, really good job. He did not win the press conference in the eyes of many people at the time. You give it a few years, and all of a sudden there are a lot more wins, and you look back at that press conference, and you're like, man, that press conference was a lot cooler looking back than I thought it was at the time. Someone who didn't win the press conference at all, who's in the Super Bowl now, Nick Sirianni. I'd play the audio for you, but it would sound like this. What's going on with it? But what he said, he was so clunky talking about systems. That was the big thing with Nick Sirianni in his Eagles introductory press conference. He's like, we're going to have systems and systems for winning and systems for guys knowing where they need to be at all times and systems. And it was just like, Nick, bro, what are you talking about right now? And he's in the Super Bowl. Now, I share the opinion of many where I don't think very highly of Nick Sirianni as a head coach. He's talking trash to fans. Bro, you're the head coach. There are some things you just shouldn't do. You know, if you've got this high-profile gig, there are just some things you shouldn't be doing. If you're the head coach, you shouldn't be going toe-to-toe with fans, but whatever. That's what he does. I don't think too highly of him as a head coach, but you can't argue with the results. They're in the Super Bowl again for the second time in 3 years. So the point is, you don't have to win the press conference to win a lot of games. And I think sometimes we can confuse that. So Liam Cohen with Duval. And this is one time where the medium of radio, it just doesn't do it justice. It wasn't just how he said it. It's the whole thing. It's the smile. It's the weird kind of like white guy dance, like Duval, like shaking from side to side. Oh my gosh, it was top shelf awkward. Oh, it was the worst. It was the worst. And in the Colts' eyes, it was the best. Oh, it was the best. Just chef's kiss to that one. Aaron Glenn, he was another one that was introduced yesterday. He's the new Jets head coach. And he said, we're built for this bleep. The New York Jets, we are built for this. And it's like, dude, you guys have the longest playoff drought in the NFL. I don't know you're exactly built for this, but okay, cool. It sounded good at the time until you did the math on it, and you're like, wait a minute, what are you built for again? You're like, 14th, 15th season? I don't even know what it is now. I think it would be 15th if they miss it this next season. Something like that, but yeah, they're built for this. Okay, all right. It just does make me feel a little bit better if you're the Colts. Look down at Jacksonville. Maybe look down at the Jets. Look down at some. There's value in looking down from time to time. I wouldn't make a habit of it. I wouldn't live your life that way. But instead of looking up at Mahomes and the Chiefs and Josh Allen and the Bills and saying, how in the world are we competing with those guys and beating those teams one after another if we're lucky enough to sneak into the playoffs? No. Forget about that for a second. Just look at Liam Cohen and Duval. And And all of a sudden you're looking at the Colts and you're like, man, we won twice as many games as those clowns down there. Man, thank goodness we're not Jacksonville. Thank goodness for that. You know, makes me feel better. You can remember that, Trevor Lawrence, he missed a lot of games and he'll be healthy, and he is like worlds better than Anthony Richardson. That's the sobering reality. But suspend all of that. Just focus in on Duval. That and that alone, and at least for a day, it could maybe put a smile on your face. There you go. All right, feel free to check in. I always love hearing from you guys. Coming up next, simple concept, numerous questions under this umbrella, okay? Keep it or change it. Very, very simple. But a couple of rules, couple of advancements. You want things to stay the way they are or move in a different direction? I'll throw that at you coming up next. I'm Brian Noe in for JMV. Keep it locked right here, 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
With JMV.
Excuse me, Robo. Any special message for all the kids watching at home?
Stay out of trouble. 93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe in for JMV. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. I'll tell you what, James, this experiment of I have a Zoom call on my same computer that I'm looking at and trying to play audio from, and so we're messing with the settings here. A peek behind the curtain here, radio wise. That's not good at all. I have no idea. So I put it back to where it was. So hopefully it starts behaving. Okay, I'm gonna have to shut the meeting down. I don't know what's going on with that. I apologize. We're trying to switch the settings where I could play some audio because I have some fantastic audio for you guys. I just want to tell you right now. but something's goofy with it. So I switched a setting thinking that might help. And we could tell coming back from break, it was like, okay, now there's an echo. So I put it back to the original setting. And it was starting to echo like crazy left and right. I don't know what's going on over here, James. Our experiment is going haywire.
Yeah, it kind of blew up in our face, didn't it?
It did. It absolutely did. I'm trying to log back into the Zoom meeting. And listen, if it starts echoing, oh,
it's immediate.
It's immediate, dude. I just got to shut that. I apologize for the YouTube people. I'm sorry, man. Like, I don't know what. Like, it's back to the original settings. No idea. But hey, we'll move it along over here. I apologize. I'm not a technical wizard. This is the extent of my technical skills. Okay, if there's a problem, like there's if I would go to a radio station and there was a weird like echo, or it was feeding back, or it wasn't connecting, or whatever. Same thing with my personal equipment. You can broadcast remotely now. I'm in the Las Vegas area right now. That's where I'm at physically at this time. If anything's haywire, I just turn it off. That's it. That's all I know how to do. I turn it off and then I power it back on. And I hope that does the trick. That's it. That's all I got for you, man. That's the extent of my knowledge. And so if something's on the same settings and it's still echoing, I got nothing. I've got nothing for you at all. Oh, actually, you know what? Shoot, I hear it. You know what? I take that back. I think the volume was on, and I think we're good. Let me fire this back up here, James. I think this is going to work out.
We trying again here?
We're going to try. We're going to try it again. We got the video going. You know, I think we're good, because that's one thing. I think it was because the volume of my computer was on.
That is very likely.
Yep. So there we go. All right. Let's checking boxes over here. I feel like I might be a technical wizard at this point. That might be a little bit too much. I don't know. But I'm approaching that range, I feel like, right here.
Get this man a job in the IT department.
That's right. Here I come, baby. Let's go. Simple concept here. The theme of this is keep it or change it. Okay? So last night, I'm watching college basketball. I was betting on a particular game. It was a night game. It was Arizona. They were hosting Iowa State. Okay? So it's just gone to hell for me. I had Arizona. I had an in-game over. And so the dream is basically dead. Neither is going to hit. Iowa State is up by 2 with under 3 seconds to play. And they're shooting 2 free throws. Okay? Any number of things here. It's not working out for us. The guy makes 2 free throws. My team is down by 4. The dream is dead. It worked out where Iowa State missed the first free throw. Okay, so there's less than 3 seconds to go. You can't advance the ball to half court. Like, good luck. They either foul you, which if they're smart they would do, or they allow you to jack up a half-court shot, and good luck hitting that. Well, that's exactly what happened. Caleb Love let it fly from beyond half court and nailed the shot. And the game was tied. It went to overtime. Arizona won the game. Now, here's the question. You can't advance the ball to half court in men's college basketball. Would you like to keep that rule the way it is, or would you like to see it changed? Now, the first part in my mind is think about keeping it the same, or what we've seen over the years. We're not advancing the ball to half court. What has it led to? Well, on the positive side, it has led to some legendary moments. There's the Christian Laettner shot. Grant Hill throws a baseball pass, like a football pass to the foul line. Christian Laettner catches it, fakes one way, hits this legendary shot against Kentucky. That is changed if you can advance the ball to half court. The Bryce Drew play for Valparaiso. Valpo, great play, football pass. Teammate catches it, dishes it off to Bryce Drew. He cans the shot. Valpo wins the game. Legendary moment. in the big dance, right? That's changed also if you can advance the ball to half court. It's changed last night. Caleb Love doesn't hit this unbelievable, it's about like a 55-foot shot at the buzzer to force overtime. That's changed if you move the ball to half court. Now, I would argue what's changed is a lot of hideous plays and shots that come nowhere near resulting in a basket and either a win or forcing overtime or what have you. I would argue that if you advance the ball to half court, the likelihood that you have buzzer beaters and legendary shots and peak drama, the odds are way better if you call timeout and move the ball to half court. I'm actually in favor of the rule being changed. I am. I would like to see the ball move to half court if you call a timeout. I know that's the way it is in the NBA. I'm 99% sure that's the way it is in the WNBA and women's college basketball. It's just men's college basketball where you can't advance the ball. I would prefer to change that. I think there's a lot more likelihood for drama and buzzer beaters and clutch shots and legendary moments. Granted, you would change it. You wouldn't have the Leitner play. You wouldn't have the Bryce Drew play. And some people wouldn't want to part with that. And I get that. But how many times do you have the exact opposite play out? Where the guy's like, all right, I got to jack this shot up from 60 feet, and I hit a lady in the fifth row. You know, like it's not even close to being a made bucket. I just like the idea of, like, think of it this way. I would say at least 9 times out of 10, if you can't advance it to half court, in the Arizona game last night, I forget exactly, it was like 2.2 seconds. You know, you're thinking, okay, dude, good luck hitting a shot, even if they let you take that shot. That's the other thing. They can foul you right away if they chose. Like, so you're thinking, okay, this is not happening. Every now and then, it's a blue moon and someone hits this ridiculous shot. But 9 times out of 10, you're thinking, oh, it's over. And it is. You know, if that ball is advanced to half court and there's 2.2 seconds left, I'm thinking, hey, man, there's a shot. There's a shot that someone could get free. They get off a decent look. Like, your odds are much better. I would prefer to change it. How about this also? The postseason format in the NBA. I threw this at Greg Rakestraw. The guys were talking about this on Query's show, where there's a lack of rivalries in the NBA right now. It's rivalry week, and you're like, is it really, though? Is it really a rivalry? It's like, okay, the Minnesota Timberwolves and Dallas Mavericks. Man, what a legendary NBA rivalry that is. You know, and so it got me thinking, they've talked a lot about changing the postseason format. And if you want rivalries, I think it's better to keep the postseason format the way it is. You're going to have a better chance of seeing the Pacers and the Knicks year after year after year, and the drama builds, the Bulls and the Pistons for how many years that Jordan and company, they're trying to get over the hump. That was a great rivalry at the time, and you've had some legendary rivalries with teams that meet consistently in the playoffs year after year. Look at it this way. What if the NFL just said, screw it, no AFC, no NFC. We just get the top 14 teams, and we put them all together. You wouldn't have Mahomes and Josh Allen. You wouldn't have Mahomes and Joe Burrow. You wouldn't have what we had with Peyton Manning and Tom Brady, right? Like, it's just different. It's completely different. And you could argue it might be better, but if you're looking for rivalries and bad blood and meeting again, and I think keeping it AFC, NFC in the playoffs, Eastern Conference, Western Conference in the playoffs, I think that's the better way to go. And even beyond just the rivalry aspect of it, it's the whole history, like completely changing the format to that drastic of a degree. It's like, I don't know, man. If you don't have the West just towering over the East or vice versa, I would just prefer to keep it the way it is. So there are a couple of things thrown your way. Keep it or change it. Men's college basketball advancing the ball to half court after a timeout. And the NBA playoffs. Keep the format the same or change it. I'm in favor of changing the college rule, move the ball to half court, keeping the NBA format. I don't want to see 16 teams or 20 teams or whatever they have all jumbled up. Don't want to see it. All right, feel free to check in. More than welcome. Love hearing from you guys. Coming up next. Okay, it's the moment of truth. Can you count on this guy, or is it time to pivot? I'm Brian Noe in for JMV. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
JMV.
Look up idiot in the dictionary. You know what you'll find?
Picture me?
No! The definition of the word idiot, which you f***ing are.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe in for JMV. Little Hanger 18, huh, James? Very nice.
Oh,
Good
yeah.
poll by you. Very nice. I was watching, I've been doing a lot more YouTube watching lately. And I was watching Dave Mustaine. He was on with Joe Rogan. He was on the Joe Rogan show.
Was he really?
Yeah, he was. You might like that.
I'll have to check it out, yeah.
Yeah, he was he's so funny, man. Dave will be this guy. You'll run into people in life like this. Where Dave will sort of position himself as how could I say it? Just sort of like doesn't have an ego, right? He's like, I'm not worried about that. It seems, And then he'll say things that are completely egotistical. It's like, all right, Dave, you do have an ego, though, man. Come on. Where he was talking about, he was in Metallica in the very, very early days. And he was talking about, they pulled up a picture, and he said, that makes me kind of sad. And Joe Rogan said something like, oh, because, you were in that band and then you were out of that band, that sort of thing. He's like, oh, no, nothing like that. Just because of Cliff. Like Cliff Burton, the bass player, he died. And that made him sad. So that was the interesting part of it. But the other thing that he said, he was like, look, man, just, it is what it is. I'm out of the band. Just don't use my music. Like don't use my songs. Don't use my guitar parts. Don't use my solos. Don't use that stuff. And then he goes, and then this guy Kirk Hammett comes along. Well, he's all right, I guess, as a guitar player. That part is like, I sense some ego there, Dave. I sense some ego, And he's like, same solos, same guitar parts, same everything. And I guess he's done okay. I guess. But that was the thing. He was like, he was bent, and I get it. Think about it. If you wrote all this music and you get kicked out of the band and they just keep your music, well, that sucks for you, right? That's a double kick. But what you'd have to watch it, James. You as a metal fan, you would love that. And it was just a little, 4 or 5 minute clip. I didn't see the whole interview. I'd have to go back and watch that whole thing. But, oh, gosh, it was just comedy. Where he's like, yeah, Kirk, he's okay, I guess.
I will say, when it comes to Mustaine, hearing him talk about Kirk Hammett, he has mastered the backhanded compliment when it comes to talking about Kirk Hammett.
Yeah? Do you have an example?
It's a lot like kind of what you were saying, where if he's talking about Kirk Hammett, I think the quote was, he's done all right for the talent that he has, was the quote that I remember seeing, which is the most backhanded compliment you can possibly give somebody.
It is. Yeah, and that's the thing is he does. He'll take that to the next level for sure. It's almost like a compliment that isn't a compliment. Is there a word for that too? Is that just backhanded, or is that just like a little bit even different than that? Because I feel like that's even more so than backhanded. But any event. Okay, let's get down to this. Watching the AFC title game, strictly as it pertains to the Colts here, okay? I'm watching Mahomes and I'm watching Josh Allen, and I'm thinking to myself, these guys are playing at such a level that how are the Colts going to win games with Anthony Richardson? How are the Colts going toe-to-toe with what the AFC has to offer with Mahomes and with Burrow and with Lamar? And they're not. Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, Stroud, it's not happening. And so that's where I start with this. I'm sorry, I'm trying to text my girl at the same time. She's talking in the other room, and it's killing me. So I'm sorry, I'm a little flustered there for a second. But we get back on track, all right? How are you getting through these teams with these top-notch quarterbacks? How? You're not going to. You look at Anthony Richardson, he's missed 19 games over 2 seasons. It's either due to injury or getting benched for Joe freaking Flacco. Come on. At some point, you have to look at this objectively and say, it ain't happening. Now, I know you could cling to hope, and there are some legitimate things that you could point at and look to and say, maybe we don't give up just quite yet. Maybe. Okay? If you compare him to Josh Allen's career has blossomed. But at the beginning of his career, it was not all sunshine and rainbows. And if you compare Anthony Richardson to Josh Allen, I looked at the college numbers. I looked at the numbers throughout the first 2 seasons, okay? And there are a couple of things where you could fuel an argument to say, hey, but wait, let's not give up all hope. Let's be optimistic here. And then there are things that you could look at and say, all hope is gone. Okay? Like, first off, let's start with hopeful. Okay? If you're comparing Anthony Richardson to Josh Allen. Josh Allen, his first season compared to Anthony Richardson's past season. So technically that's Anthony Richardson's second season, but he only threw 80-some passes his first year, right? I don't think 84 passes in 1 year really counts as a legitimate rookie season. You could be like, oh, he was there, he was in film study, he was this, he was that, he threw 84 passes, okay? That's an asterisk rookie season if I've ever heard one. So in year 2, Anthony Richardson, he threw 264 passes, right? So at least he got on the field for more time. And then you look at touchdowns and interceptions, kind of interesting. So Anthony Richardson this past year, 8 touchdowns, 12 interceptions. Josh Allen's rookie season, 10 touchdowns, same number, 12 interceptions. Okay? That's the exact same with interceptions. And Josh Allen had 2 more touchdown passes. So you're thinking, oh, okay, well, Josh Allen sucked in his first year, and now look at him. Guy might win MVP. His career has taken off. He's playing fantastic football. So maybe you look to that. But then you look at the other side of it, and this is where it's just tapping you on the shoulder and either doing the Dikembe Mutombo, no, like don't be optimistic to a fault, to a naive, maybe idiotic level, right? So you look at Anthony Richardson, and the thing that I can't get over is the experience. You can't replicate experience. You've got to have it. I can't apply for, I don't know, we're just talking about IT. I suck as an IT guy. I can't apply for an IT job and say, well, I've had limited training on the job, but I've done a lot of reading, okay? I've done a lot of reading, and I've watched a lot of YouTube videos about how to be an IT guy, okay? Like, again, I've only had a few months of kind of like actual on-the-job type experience, but I've done a lot of preparation. It's like at some point, you have to have the experience to get the gig. That's the way it goes. That's the ultimate catch-22 when you're starting out. When I was trying to get into radio, they were like, well, what experience do you have? I'm like, I don't have it. I'm just starting out. They're like, well, we're looking for someone with experience. So it's like, well, how do you get experience? Where do you go? What do you do? Like, I'll do this for free. Can I do it as an internship? No, it has to be a paid credit. So I can't even work for free to get experience? Oh, okay, cool, awesome. Radio is fantastic. You know, like, you run into this, but it's a real thing. So for Anthony Richardson, he just doesn't have experience. I looked at Anthony Richardson and Josh Allen, just passing attempts, college, NFL, just as a base, okay? So in college, Josh Allen had 649 pass attempts. Anthony Richardson had 327. So that's as close to half the experience as you can get for Anthony Richardson in college. He played 12 games at Florida. That's it. 12 games, right? He played some other games. It's funny. These college stats are hideous, man. You look, one of his first years, it says 4 games played. He threw 2 passes. Okay, those aren't games played. That's getting in at garbage time and taking a knee. That's not experience. He played 12 games basically in college. Josh Allen had a lot more experience at Wyoming. That matters. And then in the NFL, the first 2 years, again, Anthony Richardson hurt or benched first couple of seasons. He's thrown 348 passes. Josh Allen, his first 2 years, 781. So again, that's double the experience. So yeah, Josh Allen's had double the experience in college, double the experience the first 2 years in the pros. That's like, at some point, that matters. That absolutely matters. You've got collectively 755 more passing attempts for Josh Allen compared to Anthony Richardson in college and the first 2 years in the NFL. That's roughly 755 passing attempts. That's in the neighborhood of 2 seasons. Like, think about where Anthony Richardson might be if he had 2 more seasons of on-the-job training, where he might be going into next season. But the problem is he doesn't have that. And the other problem is the Colts don't have 2 more seasons for him to get more experience if he's not delivering. It's time to pivot if you're not moving forward. And that's the thing. In life, there are moments where sometimes you're either sticking with it and it's a good decision, or you're just being stubborn to a fault. You're being naive to a fault. Anthony Richardson, thus far in his quarterback career, has given you more than enough reason to think this guy is never going to be a franchise quarterback. The guy completed 47% of his passes this past season in the NFL. 47%. I'm not asking for peak Peyton Manning, but you got to do better than 47%. That's just baseline. How many times did we clown Tim Tebow for having a hideous completion percentage? All the time. At some point, you got to complete passes. You got to give us something to go on. We have to have some production. It'd be the equivalent of dating a girl and she gets a call from John. And you're like, who's John? He's just a friend. Okay, no big deal. And then she bumps into Jeff while you're out. And he gives her a big hug. And you're like, wow, who's Jeff? He's just a friend. Okay, we're moving forward. Now it's her birthday. Rick posts, happy birthday, babe. Miss you. Hope to see you soon. Man, who's Rick? He's just a friend. At some point, you're just blind if you're moving forward. Like, she just has a lot of friends. I don't know. You're getting many, many signals that these are choppy waters here, okay? So you can either go on blindly believing this is your girlfriend and that things are going to work out, or you can pivot and say, I need to start dating other people. That's where I'm at with Anthony Richardson. It is time to date other quarterbacks. That's why I go back to this upcoming NFL draft. If the Colts are in a situation where there's a quarterback with some promise, with some potential, and they don't select him, I don't know why not. I really don't know why not. I started thinking about, after watching the AFC title game, and I'm watching Mahomes and Josh Allen do their thing, I'm looking at how special Jaden Daniels is with Washington and the other championship game, and I'm like, man, it's a gauntlet. It's not just winning the AFC South. That's step one. But that's a step to get you in the playoffs where you hope to do damage. You know what I mean? Like, the Texans have graduated from not just winning the AFC South, but they're hoping to take a significant step in the playoffs. That's where you ultimately want to go. It's like, what are your chances of that? And that's why, if you're being honest with yourself, you can't play this game of, well, I mean, look at Josh Allen. Like Anthony Richardson's passer rating this past season was 61.6. That's not even in the toilet. That's like below the toilet. Like it's indefensible is what it is. And so why are you saying, you know what? Let's not give up all hope. There's a reason why they drafted him 4th overall. He has a lot of potential. Maybe. It's like, why would you, again, be going forward with that? You just sound like the guy whose girlfriend is giving you all these warning signs, and you're like, no, I think it's okay. I think it's going to be all right. God, man. In the draft, I would pull a Washington Commanders. The same draft, they took RG3 number 2 overall. They still drafted Kirk Cousins in the 4th round. And Kirk Cousins started way more games and was way more productive than RG3, who sadly suffered some injuries and that derailed his career. And that's a little bit different than just being unproductive. But listen, Anthony Richardson's been banged up quite a bit. And he doesn't have half the numbers that RG3 had as a rookie. He doesn't. And so I don't know why going into this upcoming draft, the Colts, again, if there's a player, there's a quarterback on the board that has potential. Again, you're not saying, oh, this guy for sure, he's a can't miss. It's very rare. I don't know if this class has a can't miss guy, even if you take the number 1 overall guy. Even if you take Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward, you get beyond that. I don't think any of those guys are can't miss. The NFL, you've got guys like Russell Wilson in the 3rd round. You've got guys beyond the 1st round that have stuck around for a long time. Tony Romo was doing the AFC Championship game. He's an undrafted guy. I don't know why you would say, nope, not interested in a quarterback. We've got Anthony Richardson. What? And it doesn't mean you give up all hope. I'm just saying the Colts, if they're faced with a quarterback with potential, with promise, take him. Take him. Maybe it pans out. Maybe you find a guy. Maybe that's your quarterback of the future. And you're not kicking Anthony Richardson to the curb. You're starting him for another season. Maybe somehow, some way you luck out, and he's the guy the light bulb turns on. But worst case scenario, if it doesn't, and it's likely that it doesn't, you've started the clock. You might have a guy that's at least in the building, getting reps. You're seeing, like, Patrick Mahomes started 1 game his rookie season. Think about that. They started the clock with Mahomes. Okay? He was hopefully going to be their quarterback in the future. They took him 10th overall. But there's no crystal ball. You don't know for sure. And he sat almost the entire rookie season. But he was there, and he was working, and they saw him. And he started 1 game against the Broncos the final week of the regular season. And then he was the guy the next season, threw 50 touchdown passes. It's freaking insane. Okay, so listen, I realize the likelihood of finding a Mahomes or even a franchise quarterback in the 3rd or 4th round, it's not great. It's not great just finding a QB. You're not going to find another Mahomes. We can put that to bed. It's not awesome. But you know what? Your chances are 0 if you don't try. If you say, we're just going to roll with this Anthony Richardson guy and not take a quarterback with promise, with potential that's staring us in the face in the 3rd round, I'm like, why not? Kirk Cousins started a lot of games as a 4th round pick. It was pretty serviceable with Washington. It gave him at least a competent quarterback play for a long time. You don't even have that as the Colts. You don't. And so I would absolutely, I would. If there's a possible QB there that can be taken, I would take the guy. I wouldn't randomly just, be shooting a blind 90-foot shot hoping it goes in where it's like this guy has next to no potential and we're just hoping to get lucky. Screw it. We're throwing darts at the dartboard with a blindfold on right now. I wouldn't do that. But look, there are some dudes where it's like, what if Quinn Ewers was just on the board? Somebody'd be like, oh my gosh, no, are you kidding me? Quinn Ewers has started a lot of games. Quinn Ewers at one point was thought to be a 1st-round pick. Something like that, someone like that, I would be open for that. I would. Some might disagree, and that's fine. But I would point to, okay, I get why you don't love Quinn Ewers, but why would you let Anthony Richardson stand in the way of taking a guy who one day might become your franchise quarterback? I think the odds are better if you start to look beyond Anthony Richardson than just cling to Anthony Richardson. That's all I'm saying. Feel free to check in here. I'm Brian Noe in for JMV on The Fan. I also threw this out there at the beginning of the show. What's the whiniest you've been as a sports fan? Because I'm I'm hearing all these whiny comments about the Bills and the Chiefs and the officiating and and I just started thinking, what's the whiniest I've been? You know? And I think, and it could be a different answer if I give more time to think about it. I think the whiniest I've been was the NFC Championship game a few years ago when it should have been a pass interference call and the Saints did not get the call. If the call is made, they kneel on the ball 3 straight times, kick a short field goal, and they're going to the Super Bowl. It was as clear as day. It was pass interference. The call wasn't made. I thought the Saints got absolutely hosed. Absolutely hosed. But that, to me, it's different than the Bills game because even if they say Josh Allen got the first down, Bills are ahead by 1 point, that isn't game, set, match. Sorry, it's not. This is a Bills team that lost to the Chiefs with a 3-point lead and only 13 seconds left. They somehow, some way, willed a loss to happen instead of squib kicking it. And horrible. So even if that's a first down from Josh Allen, I'm not convinced the Bills win that game. Certainly would have helped their odds. But the Bills had lost 3 straight playoff games, including the 13-second game to the Chiefs. Why do you think it would be a lock that the Bills would? There's no way it was a lock. It would have helped their odds, but let's not act like it's the lock of locks. But I sounded like these Bills fans or these, people complaining about officiating sound. I sounded like that with the NFC Championship game. But again, I don't think it's the same thing. It's not like the Bills, the Bills were in the red zone. That gives them a first down. They're able to run the clock out, and the game is over. It wasn't like that. There's still a lot. The fourth quarter is still left. Like, that's a lot of time left for Mahomes to come back. So I don't think it's the same thing as that Saints game where the pass interference, if it's called, the game is over if they can execute a short field goal. It's over. So your hope is, well, hey, maybe they miss a 27-yard field goal. Like, good luck with that, right? But I would say the whiniest I've been is that NFC title game with the Saints getting hosed. I was not whiny with the Bush push game. I could have been whiny as a diehard Notre Dame fan when Reggie Bush pushed Matt Leinart into the end zone. For whatever reason, I just never complained about that. I thought it was a weird technicality where technically that's against the rules for a player to push another player. It was blatant, but I don't know. For whatever reason, I never got bent out of shape about that. I thought that would be a kind of a goofy way to win a game is like, technically you can't do that. You do have a leg to stand on, but for whatever reason, I never went down that road. I thought Notre Dame should have taken care of business, not allowed a 4th and 9 completion for like 50 yards or whatever it was. So I never complained about that one. I didn't. But man, the amount of complaining with this Bills loss, holy cow. Wow, people are losing their minds. They really are. They're going off the deep end with some of this stuff. Wild stuff. But I am curious, if you have a sporting event that you were the whiniest about, I'm curious what it was. If you'd like to share that, that's what I like to do because that could be about any of the local teams of interest, not necessarily a Bills thing. It could be the Colts, could be the Pacers, could be college basketball, could be anything, and you might have had a legitimate reason to be whiny. You might have had an illegitimate reason to be whiny, and you still were. Those are my favorite ones. You know what? I'll give you one around the corner that I think was it was illegitimate whining. It was. There's an asterisk on this. It requires some explaining, but I think it was illegitimate whining at its best. So we'll get to that coming up. I'm Brian Noe, in for JMV. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
5. The Fan.
I'm Brian Noe in for JMV. It's 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. We got tickets to give away here. Talking Simple Minds. It's going to be Sunday, June 22nd at Ruoff. Caller number 9. I suggested to James we just do karaoke for the rest of the show. You know? Whoever sings it the best. Don't. Maybe I could turn the volume of my keyboard on.
It's a little, little natural reverb right there.
Yeah, let's go chorus to really draw out the richness of my voice, you know? But he just said caller 9. Maybe I shouldn't even say this, but James, you might want to do this at some point in your radio career. One of my friends, I did radio in Fresno, California a long time ago. And one of my buddies, Gnarly Charlie, he was on a country station at the time. So I'd go hang out from time to time. And he'd be like, caller 25. And he would, person after person, he'd be like, caller 24, just to hear what they would say. And it was so hilarious because you could imagine, 25, you're one away, or so you thought. He'd be like, caller 24, and they'd be like, oh, horrid, or would they be cussing? And it was so funny. So funny. But, every now and then, maybe just go to 5 people in a row, James, and be like, caller 8, and they're one away, or so they think. So they think. Let me get out to the phones here as James makes dreams come true with Simple Minds tickets. Love that. Michael wants to check in on the Fan. What's going on, Mike?
Hey, how you doing, brother? Are you having a good day?
I am, man. How about you?
Yes, sir. Just getting home. Life is good. First time calling in. I really enjoyed listening to you. I thought you were crazy at first when you were talking about drafting another quarterback. And now, I will tell you this. I am a Bears fan, and I have no room to judge any of this. But here's my perspective. I thought you were crazy, but the more I thought about it, I started to agree with you, and here's why. If let's say this scenario, Richardson stinks, well, you got his replacement. Hopefully, you're developing. Or another case is Richardson turns out to hit that ceiling that was being talked about earlier. Amazing. Mm-hmm. Well, now you've got this guy that you've developed, and you have a valuable trade asset that in the long run could pay off on a rookie contract. So I think that makes a lot of sense. Obviously, Richardson's going to have his feelings hurt probably, but I think that's the best move for the organization, in my opinion.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that, Michael, for sure. And good luck to your Bears, man. I'm curious to see what they do with Ben Johnson and Caleb Williams. It should be a lot of fun. I'm very curious about that. And we'll see.
I hope you're right. I appreciate that. I know a lot of Bears fans down here in Indianapolis and stuff too, and I feel like everybody's kind of in the same boat. I'm interested. Cool. Hope it works out. Mm-hmm. But I just refuse to get my hopes up. Again, I got talked into it going into this year, and I'll tell you, I didn't have high expectations in terms of like them going anywhere. But I mean, I love Indianapolis, and I really tried as long as I could to root for Eberflus. And good defense. He came in. I'm like the first year, whatever, man. Like it was getting blown up anyway. Second, 7-10, not good. Okay. And then to go into this year and feel like, okay, there's momentum, we got weapons, and to be just like utterly let down in the way of just like the dunderhead coach syndrome and not calling timeout and just like totally losing control of the lot. So anyway, thank you for listening. And if I could, just the whining moment, I think you said the whining moment. Mine is Bears related, and this is, I think it was like the 2010, is there 2010 or 2011 NFC Championship, and the Bears played the Packers.
Yeah, B.J. Raji, Oh,
God, stop it. Don't even say it.
Yeah, Caleb Haney. Jay Cutler. I could go on and on. I remember that game well.
2012, but whatever it was just like, that was like the kick in the groin. It was like 4th and 20 or whatever it was, and Randall Cobb is a name that will It will haunt me for, I think, a long time. But anyway, I hope you.
So wait, just to be clear though, was it the NFC title game, Michael, or was it that long pass to Randall Cobb? Which one was that?
Well, God, now they're, this is sad. They're all running together.
I know.
That's funny.
That's life as a fan, man. Yeah.
Amen. I appreciate you, man. Have a good rest of the show. Enjoyed talking with you. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate that, Michael. Yeah, but oh man, the first one was the NFC title game. I'd have to go back and get the exact year. But it was the year that the Packers went to the Super Bowl, beat the Steelers. So we're talking that was Super Bowl 45. So that must have been the 2010 season, because that was the year after the Saints won 44 against, gosh, James, who'd they play? Oh, that's right, the Colts. Sorry to bring that up. But we have, we're just checking boxes over here. We had the Colts losing in 44. Then we had the Bears losing en route to 45. But yeah, that 2010 NFC title game, that was B.J. Raji. Remember him? He had a defensive score in that game. Jay Cutler got hurt. Caleb Haney came in, undrafted guy. Looked like they had a chance. They lost. I think that was like a 21-14 game. It was a close game. And Jay Cutler just got crushed for that thing. That's the thing, man. I know a lot of people came to Jay Cutler's aid. A lot of defensive players. Urlacher, there were guys like, hey, man, if Jay can't go, he can't go. I'm like, yeah, if that was Brett Favre, he would have gone. But sorry, I don't know. I don't know what to tell you. Like, maybe Favre is crazier or has a higher pain threshold. I know not all injuries are the same, but I know all quarterbacks aren't the same also. And if Brett Favre had the exact same injury, there's no way he's standing on the sideline. Standing on the sideline while an undrafted Caleb Haney is on the field. There's zero chance that happens. And a lot of people hate me for thinking that, but I absolutely think that. Sorry. And then, yeah, Randall Cobb had the long touchdown right down the middle of the field. Another season shortly after that. Yeah, that's rough. It's if you're a Bears fan, these freaking Packers, man, they've been a thorn in the side from time to time. Okay, real fast. Let me get to a call, and I'll circle back to something that got me thinking about your quarterback of the future if you're the Colts. We've got Eric is with us here. Eric, welcome in, man. You're on the Fan.
Hey, Brian. How the hell are you this afternoon?
Good, bud. How are things with you?
Not too bad. I do have just a little infrastructure commentary. The roads in our fair city are disintegrating. Just a heads up. But they'll deal with that when the spring gets around, I think. But I think the Bills fans and everybody's losing their mind a little bit from the last game because it was kind of led into that Mahomes was getting some favorable calls even the week before with some of those roughing, and they didn't do anything to dissuade that this past weekend. But my personal whining, and I will whine about that to this day, the 27 Houston Asterix cheating to win the World Series against my Los Angeles Dodgers.
Oh, man. Yeah, I know it. I know you can. You know what's funny, Eric? You might not laugh at this, but it was so well done where because your Dodgers are just loading up on everybody. I think it's the new evil empire. They have done a magnificent job getting top-end talent, and they just got another stud pitcher on the cheap. And someone just put on Twitter, they were like, the 2017 Astros got it right. You know, like because they're so upset about the Dodgers loading up on talent. I know that probably doesn't make you laugh, but I thought that was a pretty funny tweet.
Yeah, that was a tough year. And I saw a response to the Dodgers loading up, and they are that the Dodgers aren't ruining baseball. It's all the other teams that aren't doing anything that's ruining baseball. So go Dodgers.
All right, man. Appreciate that, Eric. Have a good evening, man. Yeah, that's a tough one because, I mean, if you're a fan of a team, I root for the St. Louis Cardinals. My dad grew up in Alton, Illinois, just outside of St. Louis. And, if the St. Louis Cardinals were pulling a Dodgers, the Cardinal fan in me would be like, this is freaking awesome. Screw you guys. You guys do the same thing, It's not just us. But the baseball fan in me would say this is not good for baseball. It's just not. To have a team towering above the rest in talent. Like, the secret sauce in the NFL is a hard salary cap, free agency, the draft, like all of that. It's pushing teams to the middle. It's parity. That's the secret sauce. That's the best thing that the NFL has going for itself. And I realize Mahomes is going for a 4th Super Bowl, and they were in the AFC Championship game for a 7th straight year. It's insane. But you still have a lot of parity. You had the Washington Commanders 4-13 last season to the NFC Championship game this season. Right? Like, that's parity. That's something that doesn't exist in baseball. And I would rather, listen, ask yourself, what would the NFL do? The NFL, they would not have what baseball has. They put a hard salary cap in place. They would have free agency. They would have all of that stuff. And a lack of salary cap in baseball on top of deferred payments. They're paying Shohei Ohtani like $660 million like 10 years from now. Right? Like, how can that be? How can you defer payments like that? We have fun with Bobby Bonilla Day. That dude makes like $1.95 compared to Ohtani. I just don't think that's good for baseball. It's great for the Dodgers. It's awesome for the Dodgers. I would think it's awesome for the Cardinals if they were doing the exact same thing. But there's no way anyone can convince me that's great for baseball. It just isn't. And you have so many more games. Imagine if the NFL had a team, talent-wise, that was just towering above the rest. Imagine if the Chiefs, they got the equivalent of Ohtani on deferred payments. You realize people, they'd be losing their freaking minds if you were able to do that. But that's what exists in baseball. That's, wow. I would also say this, as far as the Colts quarterback thing goes, ask yourself what the Colts would do if they were in ask yourself what the Chiefs would do if they were in the Colts' shoes, right? Think about this. Well-run organization, looking to the future. They had a legitimate quarterback in Alex Smith. Legitimate. You can win games. He led the league in passer rating. Like, he's serviceable. They're like, no, screw this. We want to do way better. We want to swing for the fences. Let's draft this guy Mahomes, who's got some tools. He's out of Texas Tech. He's a little wild, but let's give it a shot. And look how that turned out. What do you think the Chiefs would do if they had what the Colts have? They have Anthony Richardson, who has either been hurt or benched or sucked for 2 seasons. You think they're like, yeah, let's just see if year 3 is our year. No way. They would be moving forward. They'd at least be looking to the potential future drafting another guy while still maybe trying to develop Anthony Richardson. But there is 0 chance they're like, all of our eggs in this Anthony Richardson basket. No way would they do that. No chance. And so that's something that the Colts absolutely have to think about. To put all your eggs in that basket is crazy. I'm not saying kick them to the curb right now. Still try. Maybe there's positive signs in year 3. But there's no way I'm just closing myself off to drafting a quarterback in this year's draft. No way Anthony Richardson has done enough to make me say, no, I just can't. I can't do Anthony Richardson that way. What? No, you got to look out for number 1, which is yourself, which is the franchise, not Anthony Richardson. So I would absolutely draft a QB. If there's a dude with potential, with promise, that could be a legitimate, possible franchise quarterback of the future, I would absolutely draft a guy. Would do it. All right, we close it down in style. Maybe some Simple Minds karaoke? Maybe, before we get out of here. I don't know. Not making any promises. And I have to pay off the illegitimate crying that's around the corner. It is 107.5 and 93.5 The Fan. I'm Brian Noe in for JMV.
The Ride with JMV.
Well, we're waiting.
93.5 and 107.5. The Fan.
There you go. I'm Brian Noen for JMV. Very nice. We close it down the only way we know how to, James, right? And that is with a little band named Slayer.
Damn
now,
right.
you are cooking with grease over here. Love that. I got a text. Shout out to my guy, Stone King. Know this guy from college. Went to Ball State, lives in Indy. And he's listening today. This is very nice. Said, sounded good on the radio, man. So that was nice that he was lying to me. I mean, listening. It's funny, too, because I texted him. I looked back, and I'm like, this is mid-August. I go, hey, bud, Ilse and I, this is my girl, are in Indy until mid-September. We'll have to raise the roof at some point. He just gave me the heart, like yeah, thumbs up. Never contacted me. Freaking guy. I take my shout out back. I'm just kidding. Let's go to the phones here real fast. We got a couple of minutes. JJ, it's like the old John Wooden. What is it? How did he say that? Don't hurry, but I don't know. Just get to the point. JJ, you're on The Fan. What's going on, man?
Brian, know what you know, big dog.
Man, I'm just enjoying life right now, JJ. How about you, bud?
Same thing. Living life, loving living. Hey, real quick, I just got two quick things so you can get to your next call. The first thing is my big whine is every season. I'm a high school basketball official of 25 years, and they've brought that whole flopping to this side of it. So my big whine is that flopping. Stop flopping. Stop throwing yourself on the ground. Stop hurting yourself. And then secondly, I used to work overnight a long time ago and listen to a certain Ben Maller. Were you ever on that?
Yeah,
Okay.
I'm on with him. Yeah, I'm on for him every now and then.
So I want to tell you, I appreciate that. The nights where I had to work overnight, you came in strong, man. Keep it up. Appreciate it, man. All up.
I appreciate that. That's awesome, JJ. Really appreciate that. The Wooden motto was be quick but don't hurry. I couldn't remember it exactly, but that's what I was trying to come up with. And, man, amen to that, JJ. I can only imagine being an official and working through the flopping. I don't even remember where I was at the time, but they dragged me in to officiate some it was like a grade school basketball game or something just random. And it's amazing. You can watch on your couch and say, oh, this guy should have called that. And how do you miss this? And how it was funny. One of the coaches was like, 3 seconds. Can we get a 3 seconds? It's 3 seconds. The guy's just parked in the lane. I'm like, oh, yeah, I'm supposed to look for that. There's so many things you have to look at the same time. Bro, if you think you can just walk out of your house and be a good official, you are lying to yourself. It's way harder than you think it is. It's been a fun show. By the way, a couple of things here. Michael and Eric checked in. They made various points. I would be in favor of this. More replay assist. Replay assist has been really good in the NFL. It's been quick, fast. There are some calls. There was like a hit to the head of Mahomes. That was the Texans game. It wasn't a hit to the head. If you have replay assist, it's like, okay, that's not a penalty. Pick it up. On with life. Same thing in the Washington-Detroit game. There was they called a face mask penalty. It wasn't. Replay assist would help that. I'd get a chip in the football, man, for these spots. The Josh Allen sneak. We got all this advanced technology in tennis. If it doesn't make the ball weird or heavy or fly differently, get a chip in there. Be more accurate. It's been fun. Always good hanging out with you, Indy. Always good hanging out with you, James. I'm going to go listen to maybe some Lamb of God. Have a good evening.